In my 10 plus years of prepping, there's been a lot of things that have changed. And in that time, the types of people interested in preparedness has changed also. It used to be that if you didn't have at least a year's worth of food and even more than that, or a mutual assistance group, a MAG group, or a bunch of guns and ammunition, then you weren't part of the cool kids club, quote unquote. And while the differences between preppers and someone who is just prepared can be debated, and we're going to talk about that today, I think it's a good thing that more people are interested in preparedness, even if they're only tucking away a little bit here and there because they see the writing on the wall. Today, I want to talk about these two things, the things I've seen change in preparedness and the types of people that are interested in preparedness today. And I also want to talk about AI, because AI is one of those things that has it could change things in a drastic way in just the next 5 years or so. We've already seen it change things in the last year, and it's just getting started. Right now, it's sort of at its infant phase, and it's just stupid. But some of the things that I've seen, it's very concerning to me. So I want to talk about that today as well. Now, before I do that, though, I want to explain what I'm doing in the videos like these moving forward. What I'm going to do is these longer form type videos. They're less polished than the ones that I do, the shorter videos that I do. I'm still going to continue to do those once a week or so. I'll do those shorter form videos. But I wanted to start doing these longer videos because it offers an opportunity for a little bit more nuance, and I can go into more depth about things. Those of you that know me or have followed me for over the last decade or so know that I used to do the Survivalist Prepper podcast, and I did that with my wife. And in that podcast, we've got over 400 episodes. We did that for, I believe, like 7 years or so, something like that. This is going to be something similar to that. I also did a show with Brian from Mind for Survival. This is going to be something similar, but I'm going to let this evolve as over the next few months and see how it plays out. These are going to be about a half an hour long. I'm going to break this down into categories, probably 3 categories per week. Maybe we'll talk about news events. I'll talk about some things that are going on that pertain to preparedness. I'm not going to get a whole lot into politics because that's sort of pointless. Those of you that know me and have listened to me for a while know what my political views are. But if it's a story that pertains to preparedness, I'll talk about it. If it's not, it's sort of pointless. Politicians are, sort of pointless. But we are going to stick to preparedness type things. We're going to stick to current events and news and stuff like that. And I'll break it down into segments. Like today, I've got a few different segments. The AI, the where prepping has come, and the types of people in preparedness. But this will change over the course of time as we refine everything in and get everything settled in. I may do little clips, little segments like I used to do with the Survival Preppers podcast. I may have news stories and things like that. May have guests on, a lot of different things that could change. We'll just see where it goes from here. But if you do have any ideas, any questions, any comments, if you're watching this video, make sure and leave a comment below the video. If I put out the audio version and you're listening to that, you can come over here onto YouTube, leave a question here. Just check out the comments and the questions, the interaction going on in this video as well. Or you can send me an email to dale@thebugOutLocation.net. Let me know what you want to talk about. Let me know, what you think about all this and everything. But like I said, I'll be doing the short form videos the same as usual, the highly produced sort of videos, a lot of B-roll clips and things like that. And then I'll be doing these as well, where it's basically me turning on the microphone and talking for a little bit about different subjects that are sort of on my heart at the time and things that I'm concerned about or things that you're concerned about. And I want to, give you my thoughts on those. But with that, let's go ahead and start with AI and prepping. And if you were on YouTube and you watch videos, there's no doubt that you're just inundated with AI videos about prepping. And while right now it's more of a nuisance and it's not, you wouldn't think that something like that is dangerous, they absolutely could be, because the information in those videos is all just regurgitated, and it's made up by algorithms and people that really, they don't know a whole lot about preparedness and could care less how prepared you are. They just want you to watch their video. They just want to get views and they want to get money. That's what's dangerous about these. They could be giving out the wrong information because they don't know what's right and what's wrong. And that's another reason why I wanted to do a podcast or a video like these long form videos, is because you get the idea about who I am. It's a real person talking to you, a person that is actually doing this stuff on a daily basis and has gone through some of the things and made some of the mistakes, and are sort of trying to help out with that. Those of you that have listened to my podcast from the beginning know that I started this as a journey. At the very beginning of my preparedness journey, I started this to sort of journal what I was going through. I didn't know what I was doing at that point, but I wanted to do a podcast and talk about it. And what that did was helped other people gravitate towards that. Is, this guy is not some sort of quote unquote expert that's telling me how to do this or telling me how to do that. He's actually going through this. Some of these videos today, they act like experts, and it's all algorithm. The fake voices are so real that you can't even tell. The scripts, the inflections, the dialogues, all that stuff, you can't even tell that for the most part, that it's AI. I can tell, a lot of you can probably tell, but some people, it's really concerning to me that if you listen to one of these videos, if you happen to watch one of these and you're like, oh, this is AI, this is crap, read the comments. The comments are absolutely ridiculous. There are people that are bought in hook, line, and sinker with this, and are just, either they know and they don't care, or they have no idea that it's not a real person. If you're watching a video that has no face on it, that's why I use a lot of B-roll and I use a lot of clips over my video, but I try to show my face every once in a while so you can see that I'm not AI. I still get comments sometimes about me being AI. I think it's funny, but if you don't see their face at all, you can almost guarantee that it is an AI video, because that's just what YouTube is inundated with these days. At this point, it's not a huge deal. With audio, it's harder to do with audio, because doing a podcast or something like this where I'm talking and making mistakes, and sometimes I say words wrong, and then sometimes it's just complete gibberish, but it's a real person. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be missing in the future, or people are going to be looking for, because it's all going to be AI generated nonsense and BS. Right now, it's not that big a deal, but when you think about what I was talking about with the comments, the reason I'm talking about this, when you think about the people in the comment sections of these videos acting like this is real, or not caring if it's real or not, it's people are already sheep. People already follow along with what the mainstream media narrative is. They follow along with what they're supposed to do. And with AI, it's only going to get worse. With all of these things, AI is basically programmed so it gives you the response that it is programmed to give you. And granted, they say how it's learning and all this and all that, and it's all BS at this point. Maybe it will be in 5 years, but at this point, to me, it's no better than a glorified search engine on steroids. What it does is takes all the information on the internet and then spews it out to you. The reason that's biased is because most of the mainstream media and the news outlets are biased. So that information that they're getting from Reddit and things like that is going to be biased. And therefore, it's going to spew it out to these people that just buy into it hook, line, and sinker. The reason that's dangerous is because people think about like a disaster or an emergency scenario where the society has completely gone to crap. It's been a week or two, and everyone has devolved into animals, basically. You've got police officers, you've got clergy members, maybe priests with the collar on, you've got firefighters and things like that. People are going to trust these people just because of the uniform that they have on. And if you know anything about preparedness, you know that these people can't be trusted. Even your next door neighbor that's the nicest person in the world, in a situation like that, can't be trusted any more than anyone else, because people will do whatever they need to do to get things done in a disaster. On an AI level, and people following along like sheep, it's sort of the same thing because they give AI this credibility that it doesn't deserve. Even, police officers these days do, but AI doesn't deserve that credibility because all it is just makes it easier to search the internet. It will make things up. That's the dangerous part as well. It doesn't say, you know what, I don't have the answer to this. Sorry about your luck, buddy. No, it will completely make stats up. It will completely make numbers up. It'll completely make quotes up. So you don't know if what you're getting is the truth or not. On top of that, it's programmed, so it depends on who's doing the programming and what they want you or what information they want out, what is socially acceptable at the time. So AI is just... there's a lot of dangers involved with this, and then you've got also the deepfakes and videos getting better. All of these things that are gonna happen in maybe the next 5 years or so. All of that has the potential to really change what we think about how life goes. We've seen, those of us that are old, like me, in our 50s, and so we've seen things change from phones, corded phones in your kitchen that you had to drag across the house with the whole cord, to cell phones, to the internet. We had 4 channels on the TV that you had to turn with a little knob. A lot of things have changed in our lifetimes, and I think it's just getting quicker and quicker. So with AI, with robotics, with all of these things, it has the potential to completely turn life upside down on its head and change the way everything works. With propaganda, with our jobs, with the way we run our daily lives, all of these things could really be affected. I think they will be affected. Now, it doesn't mean that everything is going to go to crap. Robots are going to take over the world. AI is going to kill humans. It could, who knows? But there's a lot of good with this as well. A lot of things that are going to make our lives easier. But we need to be ready. We need to be paying attention to what's going on and be ready for those changes and sort of see them before they come. And if something is bad, we've got a little bit of an inkling. Doesn't guarantee anything. Just being a prepper doesn't guarantee you're going to get through something. Just having some food storage and a survival knife and water storage doesn't guarantee a damn thing. But it does increase your odds a little bit, and it makes you a little bit more ready to react to different situations, different disasters, and that's sort of the same thing with AI. So AI right now, it's sort of a nuisance and sort of interesting, sort of fun on a personal, on an individual level, a civilian level. But I guarantee you, behind the scenes, things are getting done, things are getting talked about where this is going to be one of those tools that could be abused, just like a lot of these other things, the Patriot Act and things like that. One of these tools that could be abused to keep everyone under control. So just pay attention to that. That's something that is bound to make our life better, sort of like nuclear power, right? Something that is bound to make our lives better, but at the same time could be very dangerous, and we need to pay attention and see where all of this stuff goes. And before we get into the different types of people that are interested in preparedness, I wanted to mention that I've got the bug out location. I mentioned that earlier, the bugoutlocation.net. And if you are just getting interested in preparedness, and this isn't one of those, doom merchant type things I was talking about earlier, this is actually really helpful, and it is low cost enough that if you want to get in there, it's got a bunch of videos about how to start food storage and water storage and things like that. Just general preparedness. It'll give you an idea about which direction to go. I've got a lot of resources in there. I've got all my older podcasts, the ones that Lisa and I did. Don't judge me on those, and I'll be adding more now that we're doing these and things. I'll be adding more to that as well. So if you are interested in that, go to thebugoutlocation.net, have a look. I think you can get the monthly thing for like $7 and you can check it out. If it's not for you, go ahead and cancel. Or you can do the lifetime membership, which will give you access for the entire lifetime. I've upgraded 3 times, and everybody from the Bug Out Location number 1 is still a member of Bug Out Location number 3, the Bug Out Location number 3. So when I upgrade or do that, you'll still be a member then as well. But go to thebugoutlocation.net and have a look at that. If you are interested in survival food, those food storage buckets, I also sell legacy food storage products over at My Survival Foods. And I don't recommend that, and I'll probably do a podcast on this later on. I don't recommend that everybody just have 100%, these food storage buckets, but I do think they do have their place in preparedness, especially if you live in an apartment or a smaller space where you need to store as much food as possible in a closet or somewhere like that. You can go to mysurvivalfoods.com. You can get a hold of me at dale@thebugoutlocation.net. Ask me questions if you want, if you are interested in something like that, or even the water storage buckets. Those are pretty popular, the water storage containers. But you can ask me questions about how much food storage do you need. I'll answer all your questions, and you don't even have to buy anything if you don't want. I would be leery about some other companies. I'm not going to go into I'm not going to say any names right now, but maybe I will later. But I'd be leery about some of the other companies. I do like Legacy Foods because they are the best bang for your buck when it comes to calories per calorie, dollars per calorie. You're getting the best bang for your buck. All of these survival foods, not the best tasting in the world. All of them have a lot of preservatives, but I think Legacy Foods is one of the better ones. And the people who run Legacy Food Storage are actually preppers too as well. So if you are interested in that, we've got thebugoutlocation.net, and we've also got mysurvivalfoods.com, and those links will be in the description below. All right, so next I want to talk about how preparedness has changed over the years. Since I started this 13, 14 years ago, I started my preparedness journey, and I started the podcast right around the same time, how things have changed and what I've seen in that time. For those of you that have been following me for a long time now, you've probably heard the story, but I'm going to go over how I got into preparedness real quick, do the abridged version of this, and then talk about how I've seen things change over the years. I first got into preparedness about 14 years ago, and basically I was interested in things that people in preparedness are interested in. I was sort of the survivalist, right? I was the guy that liked to go camping, hunting, fishing, and doing outdoors things, learning some of the bushcraft stuff. And although I wasn't all that great at it, still not all that great at it, but I like learning those things. And then I met my wife, and we lived sort of in a rural area, or semi-rural, and she was more of the prepper side of things. She was the one doing things like the food storage or water storage and the things around the house just in case something happened. Now, when I first married her, I didn't really have any idea what prepping was, and when she sort of approached the subject to me, I was kind of like, okay, I don't know why you need to call it something. It's, that sounds like something my grandma would have just called everyday life. But I wasn't against the idea. She did what she did, I did what I did, and I saw where it sort of made sense. And so it wasn't something I just thought was just absolutely crazy and ridiculous. A little while later, there was a winter snowstorm, and I had my little Hyundai at the time, and got stuck a couple hours away from my house and had to hoof it there. And in that time that it takes you to hoof it in the freezing cold and snow, you have a little bit of time to think about things. And in that time frame, I was thinking about the preparedness thing and what I would do if I was further away than a couple hours. The kids were at home by themselves, the electricity was out, and things like that. All those things that start going through your brain, started thinking about those, and in the process started thinking about how preparedness really did make sense, and how my wife was really right about the whole subject. And at that point, once I got home and we talked about things, we decided that we'd start a podcast. And in that podcast, I was no professional prepper or anything like that. The whole podcast, if you go back to listen to the first episode, and I have all the episodes over at thebugoutlocation.net, but if you go back to that website, I've got all the way back to the first episode. And those first few episodes, you'll see that it was sort of chronicling my journey in preparedness from starting out from zero till basically where I'm here right now, where I sort of understand everything. I've got all the answers. I know a lot of the things about this. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the supplies that I need, and I'm certainly not 100% prepared. I don't think anybody can be 100% prepared, regardless if you have the Mark Zuckerberg doomsday bunker in Hawaii or what. Nobody can be 100% prepared, but I've learned a lot of things, and I understand where to look, and I understand what questions to ask in these years, and I understand I've made a lot of mistakes basically, and I understand, for the most part, what I'm doing now and which directions that I want to go, and which directions I should go and which directions I want to go. At any rate, a lot has changed since then, and one of those is me, and you sort of grow in preparedness, and you sort of learn in preparedness and refine what it is you want to do, your individual preparedness plan. A couple other things that have changed in preparedness is the supplies themselves, and the main one I think of here is the batteries. Back when I first started, back in my day, back when I first started, you had the Jack Spirko podcast, and you had Rob Hannes, who did the Preparedness podcast, and a couple of other ones as well. You had a couple of websites, but nothing like you have these days. If you wanted to build a battery bank, you had to use the deep cycle marine batteries, the lead acid batteries, things like that. Old clunky inverters and or really expensive inverters. The power stations were almost non-existent. I think Jackery was 10 or 15 years ago is when they came around. The ones before that were absolute junk. I had one. I can't even remember who made it, but it was absolute junk. It was basically a jump starter, and it lasted about a year. Nickel cadmium battery, just crap. But that's what the options were back then. These days, you have the Life PO4 batteries, which the prices on those, there's so many people in that niche, the battery niche, that the prices are coming down so much. You can get one for $100, $150. May not be the greatest battery in the world, but it's going to be better than one of those marine deep cycle batteries. They've got batteries that, are up to $1,000, which I think is too much. But the Life PO4 batteries and even the power stations, there are so many options these days, and it's so much better than even the lithium ion batteries because of the battery management system in these. You can keep them indoors. You can turn them on their sides. I mean, whatever you want to do. It doesn't have to be something you keep in the garage. It's not something you need to top off with water all the time. It's just a lot of different options for these. Power stations, even something that will power just about everything in your house, even those that are $400 or $500 maybe, are much better than the DIY battery banks you'd had to make in the past that would have costed you $1,000, maybe even $2,000. So there are just a lot more options these days when it comes to supplies and those things we can use in preparedness. LEDs and the different flashlights and different lanterns and things like that as well. The power it takes to run some of these different supplies and appliances is much less than it used to be also. Solar has come a long way, just a lot of things that it's a lot easier and a lot better these days. And there's also some junk out there too. So you do have to be careful because there are 100 different suppliers that are in the battery niche, but there are probably 50, 75% of those are just absolute junk, and they're just trying to sell you something. And it doesn't matter if they can say it's got a 5-year warranty on it, and it doesn't matter if it lasts a year because they're not going to answer your phone call anyway. So you do have to be careful, but there are a lot more options these days. Also, there's a lot more options when it comes to information and getting information. Back in the day, I had a couple different podcasts. Jack Spirko was great because he had, I can't remember, Steve Harris or something like that on his show, where he talked about how to set up a battery bank, how to use an inverter for your vehicle to get a little bit of electricity. And those were, it was a gold mine of information, but you had to be at the right place at the right time to take advantage of that stuff. And you had to, take notes and write that stuff down. These days, that information is all over the place. So all you have to do is search for a specific topic, and you're going to get the information from a number of different people, not just one or two people on that subject. So you've got websites, you've got podcasts, you've got videos, and just so much information about preparedness or anything really that you're interested these days. The internet has made getting that information much easier and much better. The problem is you've got to figure out what questions you need to ask, and that's just the part of the process of learning preparedness and going through, like I talked about, going through this journey and making the mistakes and figuring out what you want to do, what you can do, and what's going to be the best thing for you and your family. So a lot has changed in preparedness, and what I was talking about AI earlier, a lot is going to change in, it's been 15 years now, and I can see the changes. And even, back when we were teenagers, and I say we, us in our 50s, when we were teenagers, 40s and 50s, life was a whole lot different back then than it is now too. And I think with AI in the next 5-10 years, it's going to be a completely different world than the one we're living in now as well. So it's one of those things, pay attention, sort of take advantage of what you can, when you can, and then, cross your fingers and hope everything turns out in the future, and just be ready for whatever, whichever way that the road winds and whatever life throws at you, just be ready for that stuff. But it is bound to change, and we've got to be ready, and we've got to be able to adapt to those. But it's sort of interesting looking back and seeing how life in general has changed and how specifically how preparedness has changed. And in that time, I think the people in preparedness have changed as well, and that's the one I want to talk about next. When I first started in preparedness, the type of person that maybe my perception of what the type of person was somebody that had everything all figured out, right? The prepper that had a secret room in his house with 3 years worth of food stored. And you had to go through a labyrinth of booby traps to get to a underground bunker that they had, and where they had huge water tanks of water stored. These ideas you have in your head about what a prepper is from reading books, William Fortune and things like that. Reading these books, you have this idea of what it takes to be a prepper. And these days, when I started my podcast, you start to realize that that's totally different than what the reality is. When I started my podcast, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this and see what happens. And I found out that other people were basically in the same boat as me. Some were a little bit further along, but most of these people are just normal, average, everyday people. Kind of like everyone that's watching this or listening to this right now. Most people are just average, everyday people that want to be a little bit prepared. Some of us go further than other people. I probably go a lot further than a lot of people that watch or listen to my YouTube channel. But some people go a whole lot further than I do. It really depends on your skills and things like that. Like I said a few minutes ago, I was the survivalist type and Lisa was the prepper type. You sort of gravitate to those things that you sort of good at, sort of like a hobby. You don't want prepping to necessarily be a hobby in the long run, but you need to have those hobbies to make it interesting for you, to make sure there is a long run and you don't just, burn out and get sick of it and stop doing it. A lot of people do that. A majority of people probably do that. But most people in preparedness are just those people that want to protect their family. They want to make sure that they're ready, sort of like having a life insurance and making sure that you've got your bases covered if something does happen. The older you get, the more you think about those things. When you're young and you're invincible, not so much. You're not thinking about those things. You're thinking about going to parties. You're thinking about girls or boys or whatever it is. As you get older, you start to have a family. You start to raise children. That's when you start thinking about those things, and that's when this stuff becomes one of those things that you're like, maybe this kind of is important. Maybe I should look into this a little bit more. And then from that point, you decide where it goes. It doesn't mean that all people that are in preparedness have to go with the 2 years worth of food. You got to move out to a rural location and, do things exactly by the book like a real, quote unquote, real prepper would. Honestly, it doesn't really even matter if you call yourself a prepper or not. A lot of people choose not to even go by that label. The reason we use prepper is because it's a way to categorize things. So if you're looking for information about, different emergencies, food storage and things like that, if you didn't have the term prepper or survivalist or anything like that, you would probably, if you typed in food storage or emergency preparedness on the internet, you would probably get FEMA, the Red Cross, and all these different websites, and they wouldn't go into the detail that we as preppers do. I call prepping sort of like FEMA and the Red Cross on steroids. We take their little 3-day recommendation and we boost it up. We talk about more things than just having a go bag or a small first aid kit, things like that. We talk about this being prepared, actually prepared for when the Red Cross or the government or these other people aren't going to be able to get to you, and you are the only person responsible, the only person that's going to be able to save you and your family. That's what preparedness is. And that's what most people in this, that's the similarity most of us have. But besides that, everything is just so different. You've got demographics, you've got different races, different economic levels, different. I mean, people are just like everything in life. People are different and do things differently. But when it comes to the mainstream media, when it comes to the typical narrative of what prepping is, everyone gets lumped into this one thing, which makes people apprehensive about telling anybody that, hey, you know, I'm into preparedness, I'm into prepping, things like that. Because the second you say prepping, everybody's like, oh, you're one of those, huh? You're one of those. Okay. This conversation is over, or I'm going to act like I'm listening to you, but I'm going to go home and I'm going to talk to my husband or wife and tell them how batshit crazy you are. So, at any rate, there's people are just completely different when it comes to preparedness, and it didn't really. Maybe it used to be that way, but it wasn't as acceptable as it is these days. These days, you can debate whether it's, you know, what a prepper is and what somebody that's interested in preparedness is. Like I said, we're going to talk about that later. But it doesn't really matter. To me, I think it just matters that you are into preparedness. I do think if you got 1 week worth of food and, you know, maybe a few gallons of water stored just in case something happens, the power goes out, I don't know that that's really a prepper. A prepper really does take it to that next level, that rather than just being prepared for a couple of days. A prepper, and honestly, I don't. You can call yourself what you want and when you want. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm not one to say, oh, you're not a prepper, or you're not this or that, or you can't say you're just into preparedness because you've got everything that a prepper would have. I really don't care. It's just a way to categorize everything. But with prepping, I think there is a difference. If you are into preparedness and you want to make sure you're ready, that Red Cross level or maybe a little bit higher, then I'm not so sure that is quote unquote prepping. But that doesn't mean that just because you are to that prepping level that you have to label yourself a prepper either. A lot of different types of people, a lot of different things that are going on preparedness, and a lot of differences in how people want to prepare. Not everyone wants to prepare for a nuclear exchange or something like that. Some people just want to prepare. A month is long enough for them. They don't see anything happening that's going to go on for longer than a month, and they're fine with that. And that's okay too. I personally, my time frame is about a year or so, because I think if you've got enough stuff prepared for about a year or so, there's a lot of stuff in that time frame you're going to go through, and there's no guarantee that you're going to come out the other side anyway. And if you can get through that situation for a year, you're going to be, one of the very few people, and you are going to be better off for it because you're going to have learned all of those things. And it's going to be a situation where you're going to know how to garden. You're going to know how to, use different things and sort of rebuild, I suppose. So to me, it's something that lasts longer than a year. It's possible, I suppose, but that's not something I sort of focus on. Mine is a year, and most of the time, much less than that. And I think that's where a lot of people sort of live, in that time frame of preparedness or prepping. All right, so like I mentioned earlier, if you have any ideas about where you want this to go, or ideas what would make this really cool, like I said, it's going to sort of evolve over the next few months or so. I could, maybe I'll have some guests on, maybe I'll have some clips, some news clips, and screen share some websites and things like that. A lot of different things that I used to do, and I'll get back into those and do those. If you have any ideas for topics or things you want to talk about, things you want to learn about, things you just want to hear about, let me know in the comments below this video, or send me an email to dale@survivalisprepper.net. I know Lisa and I used to do tinfoil hat time, which was one of our most popular segments, where we'd randomly talk about any sort of off the wall Alex Jones type thing, even aliens and stuff like that. Just talk about some random subject, and that was always fun. Maybe I'll have her on every once in a while. I can't have her on every day because she's sort of busy, but have her on every once in a while to do that. But a lot of different things. We're just going to play it by ear and see where everything goes. At any rate, like I said, if you have any questions, comments, or anything like that, make sure and leave them below. And with that, take care and prepare, everyone. We will talk to you next time.